all hanging out here to the very end. It's good on you. It's my great pleasure to be here and talk a little bit about education and artists and designers and perhaps a slightly different take on technology and leadership. I want to look at something about the maze of human development, which is something that we look at a lot as artists and designers. A lot of people today have been talking about framing good questions rather than looking at solutions, and that's very much the minds of the way that artists and designers work. There's a wonderful Peter Drucker quote about education that says, "We now accept the fact that learning is a lifelong process of keeping abreast of change, and the most pressing task is teaching people how to learn." So if you think about that in terms of a lot of the conversations today, we really need to reframe not just what we do and how we do business and how we lead our work lives, but how we learn. Today I'm going to look at that maze of human capacity, looking at art and design learning in the context of this rapidly changing world we've been discussing all day, and look at how artists and designers utilize approaches that can deepen human development and navigate and embrace change, thereby redefining leadership successes. And I'm going to ask you to listen to my part of the talk, not so much with the hat of the role that you're here representing, but really just through the minds of your imagination and your curiosity. Okay. Children, we know, learn best by physical and haptic engagement in the world. Neurologist Frank Wilson, who wrote a book called The Hand, points out that the brain expanded exponentially when the opposable thumb evolved. Simply put, what the hand was teaching needed a bigger brain. So when you think about the idea of the hand and intelligence, it's clear that there's a direct link, both evolutionarily and in a contemporary way. Children learn by collecting feedback and mapping relationships within their physical environments. They invent continuous experiments to test cause and effect, and their curiosity develops symbiotically with these repeated experiments. How do adults approach similar collection of relevant feedback in their environments and continue this natural process of building capacities based on that engaged feedback? How does this notion of distributed feedback that we've been talking today take advantage of our core human capabilities? Technology enables access to vast knowledge and complex automated computational data, but we also understand that there are some undesirable implications that result from diminishing primary experience. How can we intentionally integrate the advantages of technology with a focus on human values and human propensities? We live in a vast moment of complex and rapid global communication and change with staggering amounts of data generated daily. In just 1 minute, there are 216,000 photos shared on Instagram, 1.1 million likes on Facebook, 2 million searches on Google, 70 new domains registered, 571 websites created, and 204 million emails sent. And I often feel like I get half of them. And that's just in 1 minute. And that was as of last month. So you can imagine that it's probably escalated by today. So opportunities are plentiful for clear creative thinkers and designers to make sense of this voluminous content, because even in this time of unprecedented rate of change, human beings are still at the center. Do we need to rethink our relationship with technology and our devices? This is an illustration by one of our students, RISD illustrator Marley Gallardo, and it's entitled Technology Detox. And in her parody, iPhones become beach towels for disengagement and relaxation. And it's a commentary on the fact that we really need to control how we use our technology rather than our technology controlling us. Another student, a woman named Mayelo Mujica, created a lamp that can only be powered when 2 phones are simultaneously placed on the base. For the light to turn on, 2 individuals must relinquish their cell phone so that they can engage in face-to-face communication. This is the way that young people are thinking about communication.
It doesn't work if you have 2 phones. Yeah.
Designers are exploring how to use technology to express their values, not just the capabilities, but their values and their unique capacity to contribute as creative individuals. They regard technology as a set of tools, an enabler, as we heard in the last session, but they're tools to compose with rather than programs with predetermined outcomes. And artists and designers like tools. The more the merrier. They're not going to categorize them as this or that. It's this and this and this. They like tools. This is an example that I want to use as a symbolic example more than looking at the product itself. But this was a student, Scott Bailey, who actually hacked the program with a CNC router, and he set the resolution wrong, and he set the toolpaths off, and the result was this beautifully tapered cove pattern in these lamps, which is non-conforming to the way the program was intended to run, and it's replicable. And if we think about this as a metaphor for how we use technology, composing with it, rather than being dictated by it, we can open up a whole new world of possibilities. Artists and designers know very well how to develop ideas from the blank page, and they bring them to life in new and unexpected ways. They know how to challenge and rethink convention, and they know how to make something new that has never existed before, and they don't define failure as a negative outcome. They design it as something that encourages them to dig deeper and rethink and look at convention in new ways. Technology puts new tools into their toolbox, but at the heart of it, they're still artisans working with new tools. IBM conducted a CEO study in 2010 to determine best leadership competencies to drive new economies. Now, one of my colleagues will be talking more about the notion of leadership competencies more deeply. But interestingly, this study heralded creativity as the #1 leadership competency. And they looked at CEOs in multiple disciplines, over 1,500 CEOs in over 60 countries in different industries, and they concluded that innovation in an era of rapid change requires great creativity. Because of the fact that the business models are changing, they need to realize new strategies, they need to be creative thinkers and leaders. And in 2015 alone, there are 60 new books being written about creativity, which is a third more than just a year ago. So this phenomenon has continued to expand. But I want to talk for a minute about innovation, because innovation is often cited as the desired outcome of creative leadership. But let's look at the word, because it is one of the most prevalently used buzzwords of our time. And let's really think about what innovation means. And if you look deep inside the root of innovation, there's the word novate. That's at the root of the concept of innovation. And what does novate mean? It means to replace with something new, particularly an old obligation with a new one. But what's tricky today is that the old obligations are becoming less relevant, particularly as our new technology dependencies create different obligations and shifted behavioral and lifestyle changes that result. So we've done many workshops with different corporations doing sponsored research as a design school, working with major corporations from around the world. And what's interesting is they come to us asking us to solve certain problems. And we inevitably don't solve the problem they've asked us to solve. We solve something they didn't even know was a question. So we help them to reframe their questions. But even more interestingly is that over time, as we're beginning to do more of these projects, what we're finding is that the real issue is not so much the area of content or the query, it's the structure of the companies. And in many cases, what we're saying is, if you really want to be an innovative company, you have to rethink the presumptions you're making about the structures within your companies, because those are actually limiting your ability to go somewhere new. So I wanted to take you deep into our educational process here, because I want to make a point that will show how we teach this kind of developmental, what people are calling design thinking, from the beginning and then take it through and scale it. So this is an actual first-year RISD assignment, and I'll show you examples that build on this. And I want you all to take a minute and just imagine, how would you solve this problem? So the problem is invent, design, and build a creative tool that can pick up an egg, crack it, and beat it. Your hands can never touch the egg. The tool has to be made from wood and be one form initially that can come apart if necessary. So just take a minute and imagine how you would solve that problem. Now, our alumni achieve remarkable success because they know how to turn existing paradigms inside out and make remarkable improvements or even create whole new industries. And so I'm showing you this sample to try and teach you or give an example of how they learn to think this way. So this is one student's solution, and it's actually a very simple tool. If you look at it, and it accomplishes all of the things in the assignment. And this is another student's solution, which became sort of an extension of body parts, almost like a performance piece. And it's this precise kind of ingenuity that throws assumptions aside and develops deep thinkers who focus on what is possible that doesn't exist yet. And I could actually have done a whole presentation on just the solutions to this problem because they're so inventive. But I want to show you instead how this kind of thinking manifests and translates into solving real-world problems. This is another problem that some of our students encountered. There are 4 million babies in the world's poorest countries that are born prematurely, and they usually die within a month of birth. And most neonatal incubators that are donated to developing countries last less than 5 years. Their electrical surges, brownout, lack of routine maintenance, training, all feature into the failure rate. Yet medical personnel rely commonly on small trucks, cars, and motorcycles to reach these remote regions. So the distribution chains for replacement parts and the know-how for fixing these mechanically already exists. So assimilating these facts, our students designed an incubator that used car headlights to generate heat, air filters to ensure clean air and adequate convection, a motorcycle battery to provide power, and an auto alarm to alert caregivers of data changes. And this product was voted as one of Time magazine's best 50 inventions of the year that it was produced. And at an even bigger scale, yes, Airbnb again, which we've been talking about all day, these are RISD grads. And thinking about what doesn't even exist yet, founded by Joe Gebbia and Brian Chesky, two of our grads. They're very well known. Brian promised to challenge the status quo. And as an 8-year-old company with current valuation and numbers of guests exceeding those of the 6 top hotel chains combined, he certainly has challenged the status quo. As I said, designing what's possible but doesn't exist yet. But what really impressed me in my conversations with Brian and Joe was not so much the original idea. It's a great idea. Lots of people have great ideas. It's harder to actually manifest a great idea. But what really impressed me was that they have had to face a lot of obstacles along the way, some of them very big obstacles that would likely have put other businesses out of business. And in each instance, they've used their design thinking to make it a stronger company. And they directly attribute that to their design education. So I think creativity today is really better understood as a foundation for entrepreneurship, in many cases as articulated in this New Yorker cartoon. And I don't know if you can see the caption in the back, but it's a picture of a kid painting, and the parents are saying, we're hoping that someday Rosalie will be a major player in the creative economy. So there's the sense that if you do art, and there are studies that show that if you engage in a creative practice, you will ultimately be a more successful entrepreneur or scientist or inventor or many different fields. But I don't want to say that art and design sit in services to these industries. I'm really trying to focus on the different ways that artists and designers learn to think and how this can be applicable in helping to change business in a positive way. And I don't actually like the phrase design thinking. I prefer to think of it as design doing, because I think it has to be a very active engagement that actually has a result and an outcome. The capabilities of unconventional thinking and the strengths of designers can develop new outcomes that redefine industries with human values at the center. And these are sort of purposely chosen talking heads that are actually not real people. These are symbolic. It's an art piece by Bruce Nauman, but it's just a symbol to describe the notion of the importance of human interaction. Many business leaders have reduced their interaction with their people that work for them into technological methods through email, blogs, online software, etc. And they're losing touch with the aspect of mentoring that happens with face-to-face communication and interaction. And really, for a company to succeed, there has to be this sense of mutual learning and a sense of working towards a value that only comes from face-to-face human interaction. Remember the activated feedback that I talked about at the beginning with the baby. And so in closing here, I want to say that we really need to focus on the full capacity of tools as human beings to navigate the current pace of change. As educators, we are educating students for jobs that don't even exist yet. As business leaders, we need to think about designing successful and open conditions for the rapid changes that our industries will encounter. And we can achieve more by remembering that our human capacities are central, as illustrated by this work of RISD alum Do-Ho Suh, a very famous contemporary Korean artist. And looking at the principles of how what we teach in the design process can actually enhance the very core of our abilities. Rather than looking at hierarchical rubrics, looking at connected, networked rubrics, where we're actually informing and influencing each other as a network of creative collaborators. Thank you.